Yeah, I'm Sidney Kombo, animation supervisor at Digital. And the last movie I supervised was Avengers Endgame, for which I made a presentation here. Avengers Endgame is the final stone to the Infinity saga that started over 10 years ago and 20 plus movies. And the pressure of making this movie memorable fell again on the quality and the believability of the CG work put into it.
Who is your favorite Marvel superhero?
The truth is, it would be a supervillain. It would be Thanos.
Okay, that's fine enough.
What were the best and worst parts to work on Thanos' character?
Oh, the best was just having a chance to play with Josh Brolin's performance. That was great. And the hard part was that we knew he would disappear at the end of this one. So we just had to make it epic, but yeah, that's the sad part. Just want to take a minute to address one point. One thing that is commonly mistaken when it comes to a show that is heavy mocap is that we have the tendency to think that because we say mocap, there's no motion, animation involved in it. It's kind of a plug and play. But there's no such thing, especially when the characters that you are creating is so different from the actor or the performance who portrayed it. And when that happens, you have to treat him, you have to develop him, define him as if it was a simple 2D character or a feature film pre-production. You have to go through that same process. We needed to define Thanos as a character. We needed him to be existing beyond the voice of Josh Brolin, who portrayed him, who performed as Thanos. To do that, we started with basic posing, but those posing were a great starting point for us because it helped us define his stand, his ferocity, his, the limit that muscular body would impose on how far he could bend, and how we could still play with his ferociousness and just being able to portray his stand. This is an example of what I was talking about when it comes to plug and play in mocap. The walk cycle on the left is Josh Brolin walking. And like I said, we needed to define Thanos as a character. He has to have a life of his own. And you see what happens. Nobody is as big, as tall, as muscular as Thanos is. So when Josh Brolin or any human being walks, you wouldn't have the feeling of weight on his arm as much as they would be needed for a character like Thanos. This guy probably has 100 kilos per arms, right? So you need them to feel heavy. You need to feel that when he moves, they are bouncing against those colossal abs that he has. So we adjusted everything. We adjusted the legs to give room to those massive quadriceps. We changed the overall posture of the chest to make sure that he stands tall. He is quite certain, and he has years of battle to prove it, that nobody is as strong as he is. So he doesn't feel crunched. He is standing tall, chin up. And that's what I was trying to say when I said that we needed to make him his own. He needed to be defined as Thanos, not as Josh Brolin in a Thanos body. This is an example of how that worked in short context. So you see on the left, Josh Brolin performance, role transferred to the Thanos puppet. And the problem you can see there is that the arms are really long and you don't feel the weight of his body on the shoulders, on the elbows, and the overall stand of Thanos is not reflected properly there. So on most of the shots, that's a process that we will go through, which is adjusting Thanos' body performance. Josh Brolin a body performance to make it work with Thanos also a physique.
What was the most challenging work to do to make Thanos so believable?
It really had to do with, there is a point that I didn't talk about in this talk here that we call deep shapes. So deep shapes are a way for us to make the facial a little more organic than what it is. And having the face to feel elastic was the hardest part of the process for us. And yeah, about Thanos, that was mainly the problem that we had. And we managed to fix that. It was a big issue on Avengers Infinity War, and we sort of managed to get that a lot better on Avengers Endgame, thanks to the deep shapes. Happy with this, we proceeded with defining the facial. So at Weta, we start building, obviously, the puppet and the rig. And once we are happy with that, we like to develop full keyframe paths of facial fact stress, as we call it. And this is a process that we have on pretty much every single character that we develop at Weta. That allows us to check the different combos of blend shapes that we have, to see if they are working well, to see if we are able to express all the subtlety and the nuances that the actors, performer of the said character can put into their performance. It's really important for us not to cheat with this. So if the combos don't properly work and the lips are going into each other, if the expression that we are putting there is sort of breaking the model, we take that into account and we go get back in the rigging process, the puppet process, and make sure that all of that works. The main objective being to be able to have a puppet that will be selling all the subtleties that the actor can put into his performance. Happy with the stress facts, we go on to the first test that we ever did at Weta, with Josh Brolin delivering a performance as Thanos and us placing that performance on the character. So this is what Josh Brolin did on the day.
I also heard that you were a king and various other things.
I had a little fun.
You had a little fun.
I still love this every time I see it, because we knew that they were picking Josh Brolin to be the actor, and you hear you know the guy, you've seen him in movies, and you listen to the voice, you say, oh, okay, he has a deep voice. But when we saw him perform as Thanos, it was mind-blowing, just good, and we really wanted to have a chance to transfer Thanos to this. I want just to do a quick side note here. I was in London doing Guardians of the Galaxy and Paddington, and I was quite happy with the result when it comes to facial animation. And on the same year, Weta produced Dawn for the Planet of the Apes. And in that movie, there's Koba. I watched Koba, and it traumatized me, pretty much. I was so curious about the process they have in that place to develop such amazing capturing performance, and how they managed to get Koba to life as well as they did. And once I got to Weta, I was sure that they were, deep learning or some kind of system that would help it. The fact of the matter is, it's I. We dive deep into the facial performance of the actors. And that leads me to the second part of what I wanted to say. We say that, and we know, because it's a fact, that animators are actors, they are performers. And that's a fact, no denying that. The truth is also, though, that one main difference between us animators and the actors is that the actor doesn't have to think his subtext. He's acting, he's performing, he develops his character, and it's even deeper when he's not sitting in a recording booth, when he's out there on stage acting. All the little subtleties, the eye dart that he's putting there, that little head nod that he's putting, are stuff that would be hard for us as animators to create. We can create convincing motion, but we don't have to be diving so deep into a character as these guys have. So studying, analyzing their performance, I really think makes us better at acting for the performance that we have to create on our own.
Was it more difficult to work on Infinity War or Endgame?
Definitely Infinity War, because it was the beginning. We didn't know our Marvel client that well, and we were starting basically on him. We didn't know the character of Thanos that well either, so putting those shots together were slightly harder than what we managed to do on Endgame. Endgame was challenging in terms of timing. We didn't have much time for all the work that we had to produce, but it was far more pleasant than what Infinity War was.
I also heard that you were a king and various other things.
If you look at the little chuckle that he has when you say you had a little fun, just that kind of stuff would be hard, so hard to create, right? So we transferred, we animated that and transferred it to Thanos and got to this result. And that was on a very early Thanos rig. He was pretty early, but we were so happy to see that the range of motion for the eyes, the range of motion for the jaw was something that we managed to capture. And we showed that to Marvel, and they were pretty happy with that, which got us to test this system that we developed, that keyframe system that we developed on a short context. This shot didn't make it in the movie Infinity War, but this was the first test that we did for Thanos.
Know my name? Know your soul. It is much like mine, cursed knowledge.
Now, when it comes to facial shots, we always had the same process. The first is analyzing the footage, then we animate that on our Josh Brolin puppet. We build a puppet of Josh Brolin just to make sure that all the features of his face would be accurately transferred to a puppet. And then we took that animation, that motion, role transferred that to Thanos, and the last step that you see there is us adjusting that Thanos facial to camera to make it work.
Know my name? Know your soul. It is much like mine, cursed knowledge.
So that was pretty successful in terms of intensity again. We had pretty subtle shots, not full of emotion, and we had a pretty intense one.
Know my name?
The result was convincing from our.
It is much like mine, cursed knowledge.
Were there more difficult shots in Infinity War or Endgame?
Oh, Endgame. No question. Endgame. Every shot was a challenge in that thing. But again, we had a great relationship with the client, a lot of trust, and it was pretty easy to to come up with the right solution. It wasn't a lot of back and forth, we there trying straight away, like, this character is here, but we need to put him here. Hey, what do you think? Oh, okay, we like it. And we kept it. So it was a lot more organic, which made the stuff go faster. But boy, it was hard. Yeah, it was hard.
What is your usual workflow for a scene?
It depends. When it was full CG, the important step was to make sure that the camera motion felt realistic. That was the key thing. When it was with plate, that was a little trickier because the idea would be for me or Matt Aiken to do the turnover notes. On the turnover, we tell match move department, photo department, paint department, layout department, what else? Even sometimes compositing department, what we needed to make the shot work if they were every time, most of the time. And from there, those departments work on their stuff, and when they come back to us, we have a plate or a pipe that we can use to work on our scenes. So it was a long way before we could even touch the shot. We were counting from the moment when the shot was delivered to the moment when animation could work on it, it was a gap of 3 weeks. So it was going through all those other departments before getting to us. Another workflow on Thanos was adjusting the posing and keeping the facial performance. We had shots like this one, for instance, where when you look at Josh Brolin's body posing and facial expression, there's no issue there. It doesn't seem like he's oddly standing, everything seems fine. But once you transfer that to Thanos, the raw transfer looked like this. So the posing is not as strong. It doesn't feel as, might I dare say, masculine? And yeah, so it didn't feel as strong as he could be. So what we did there was just layering the right posing.
In all 6 stones, I could simply snap my fingers. And it all ceased to exist. I call that mercy.
And those little adjustments, we didn't even have to go back to the client to seek approval of that. We knew that if it didn't work, we just had to change it straight away and make it work. And most of the time, they didn't notice. So I shouldn't say that. They agreed without saying. Another workflow there was modifying the body motion entirely. So on those cases, we had a situation where we received a previs that was telling the story.
All that for a drop of blood.
And the mocap, the Josh Brolin performance came like this. So he was low all the time, and that transferred to a mocap that looked like this. And usually in those situations, we talked with Dan Delou, the VFX supervisor at Weta, to see what they needed. If they wanted the shot to be driven by Josh Brolin performance, or if we had to follow the previs. And in this case, the previs was what we had to go with.
All that for a drop of blood.
Most of the time, again, we had to propose new takes, new mocap. And it was a very, very good dynamic in the work with Marvel on this show, because I don't think I ever find myself in a show where the collaboration was so open. They would easily come to us and say, hey, we tried this, what do you think? Can you propose something? Because we are not fully sure that this is working. The case in question was, for instance, this one, where the motion that we have here works for 2 men of the same size, right? But Thanos is almost twice as tall as Captain America, and it's me trying to suppose somebody in stone, pretty much. It doesn't work. It's a little, it's not the best way if I want to be threatening to do. So what we suggest to them was to go with some rock bottom type of move, where you would just grab him by the head, because he's so light to him, and body slam him to the ground. And it gave the final result that you had. Another part of the animation workflow we had to come up with for Thanos was simply keyframing. And that usually came when the previs and the performance from the performer or Josh Brolin didn't really match what Marvel was after. In this case, for instance, that's the moon pulling shot. It was really hard to direct that on set back then, because they didn't know that they wanted Thanos to have some resistance on the pull and have that reflected in his overall body posing and expression. So for this, we recreate the body, the performance, and also the facial performance. And again, that happened on multiple occasions.
What is the role of the animation department on the set?
He will make sure that everything that comes to us has been shot in a way that I can utilize it. But as far as I'm concerned, it's just when we have to make element moves inside those shots. So if the plate had characters that would move not in the way that I could deal with, I just asked Matt or asked the client, and we removed those elements and put CG element instead. And that happened quite a few times. But yeah, that was about the control I had on plates. When they come to me, it's what I have to work with. I can't change them. The plates, you have to see them as the director vision. Yeah, that's what they are. But one thing we, as animator, took the most pride in and enjoyed the most was when we fully had to redesign the shot. So for this one, for instance, they had no idea of the timing they wanted for the shots, when and where Spider-Man should appear. So, and we just knew that they wanted the shot to be super dynamic. So we had the luxury to play with our camera, to play with Thanos' body dynamic, following the continuity of the shots, of course, and play with Spidey jumping in and out of the portals. This type of design came as well on shots like this, where they really wanted this to feel like the beginning of the war between the big three, as we call them, and Thanos. The thing is, on set, the performers gave us a rough idea of what they wanted. Thanos would be able to handle the big three on his own, but none of the action there was really helping us in terms of how that was designed. So we had to go in our bag of tricks and choreograph this battle directly at Weta and on our in-house capture stage. Another example of that keyframing and redesigning shots came on some of the most important one, usually where it takes most of the time to come up with an elegant solution. This is the shot where Thanos sees all his army disappearing. It has to be a devastating moment for him. He never lost, and this is the first time we're gonna see Thanos stumble. But Josh Brolin's performance captured the idea of him looking at his army being decimated, but he couldn't on stage know exactly where every single one of his guys would be, especially the main one, Ebony Maw, Proxima Midnight, Corpus Glaive, and all those main villain characters. So they were pretty much nothing on this performance that we could save and use. So we had to recreate one. And like I was saying earlier, having the chance to recreate a performance based on how much you analyze what an actor can do was great. And that's what we did on this shot. So Josh Brolin is looking around, but again, not at something specifically. So if we wanted to use this, we would have had to retime him and readjust all his motion, and that was too much of a complicated process with not a certainty of a good result. So what we did is that we revised that shot. We tried to come up with our own design of it. So making sure that Ebonimo would be the first one to go, and we didn't even have Proxima there. There she is with Corvus and Thanos standing, coming back to us. The process was fun, like I was saying, to the point where we even took the time to play with what wasn't really the main point of the story. On this same shot, they initially wanted Corvus on the left and Proxima to disappear this way, because they are lovers and nobody never really noticed that, because there's no moment in in those two movies where this backstory is talked about. But we proposed to Marvel to have them showing some intimacy just before they go. And she would embrace him just before they vanish together. Another great example of redesigning shots was this one, and showing again that nice feeling of collaboration we had with Marvel. So this is supposed to be the last shot of Thanos in the Infinity Saga, and that's how they initially wanted him to disappear. But then Victoria Alonso, executive at Marvel, came up with this nice idea of having the last shot we produced to be produced of Thanos to mirror the last shot of Thanos in Infinity War. This shot wasn't done at Weta. This is to credit of Digital Domain, and you can see that Thanos is in a paradise type of environment. The sun just in his face, and he's sitting chin up. What we did with that is that we reversed it fully. So he leaves defeated, stumbles as well, but this time he's not in a paradise type of environment. He's in a wreckage, decimated area, all alone, and the sun is behind him, and this time he vanishes, not obviously looking up, proud, but facing down.
Do you think that sometimes the errors can be fixed on the set instead of needing to fix them with CG?
Even if I think that, I wouldn't say that. just because everybody is trying his best, you know? Nobody is trying to create more work for us. If anything, it's the opposite. Everybody is trying to make sure that it works, but you have the time constraint, you have the availability of the actors, you have so many different components that comes into play when something happens. So when it comes to you, you just have to embrace it as part of your job, that is to fix whatever needs to be fixed there. Some minute to talk about the crowd. So the crowd had 2D how am I saying today? Creatures that we had to animate to make them work, and also some Shitori and Sakaran that appear in Guardians of the Galaxy and the first Avengers. To make, we had all those characters as villains to make them work. And what we did was, again, the same deal, defining a character who works well with our walk cycle. So we started with the Shitori gorilla, making him work, making him run, and putting together some different type of run for the Outriders as well. We had different cases when it comes to crowd shots. One of them was full CG shots with crowd. They were the easiest one for us to put together. This is the first example. This is what the previous team put nicely together. But the first thing I noticed when we received this shot, when this shot was turned over, is that amongst the villain army walking, we also have Outriders. And the Outriders are those vicious creatures, really mad dogs, and it didn't really make sense to us as well to have them walking. So we proposed a different approach to Marvel, saying that we would layer the appearance of the villain army, starting with the walking regiments, and then the Outriders and the creatures in the sky. So the way to put that together was, again, to sort of previs what we wanted, to have a sense of scale, to see if what we were having in mind would work as a visual representation. Happy with this, we then went ahead and transferred this into motion, turned that into motion with our main villain working. This is the first pass of our crowd. Based on this, we multiply the characters that we have, and we make what we call massive. And that's pretty much the same type of walk that you see here, but multiplied and offset in time. And that gets us to the final result that you see. Same deal goes this time with the Outriders. Now this time we had a chance to make the Outriders come the way we thought that they would, which is aggressive and running. But we moved the camera the other way than the previous did, just to show more of the scale and the craziness of this villain army appearing. The same goes for the heroes. This shot is one of the defining moments when you see the hero army appearing. Again, starting with static motion, but this showed us that our environment wasn't large enough, so we trimmed the terrain, we made it wider, we cleaned it up just to show more of the massive guys appearing on screen. Now, the hardest part was the plate-based crowd shots, and these ones were pretty painful, in the sense that we had to create the shots, but doing so we had to paint out, match move some character, roto some other characters, and mesh together the CG character that we were adding and the plate guys that were in the shot. Another example of that is this shot here, and you will see why we had to paint out sometimes. If you look at Black Panther here, for some reason, on stage, he started running crazy and going so far ahead of everybody else that wasn't the purpose, the initial purpose of the shot. You also have two Asgard, unfortunately nobody got hurt, but one of them is tripping at the very end of the shot. So the thing is, the director loved this plate. So they want to use this plate. So go ahead and make it work. So we found a solution, and the solution was to have the wasp just coming in front of Black Panther and turning into a tiny creatures, and that little moment would allow us to switch from the plate-based Black Panther to the CG one, and we removed the gas on the back as well. So the progress of this work would be as follows. So we add the CG character first, and then we paint out some of the plate that we wouldn't need. This is the moment when we paint out Black Panther, and this is the animation version that the client saw, where the wasp turned into a little creature, and it's now the CG Black Panther in there. That's where the experience of some of the VFX subs at Weta helps a lot, because they have a gazillion tricks to deal with that kind of stuff. So I have plenty of help to know how to deal with this kind of stuff.
In Endgame, and in particular in the Battle of the Portals, how did you manage so many elements?
I'm blind, right? So the good thing with this is that you don't see details. You don't see details, you see big shapes, you see volume. And that's how I approach those things. I don't care about the detail. I care about the masses. And I place the mass and I tell the story with the mass. That's why when we previous the shots when we are prepping the shots, we do that with really simple shapes, because that's what matters. The complexity comes from the simplicity of the initial setup. So we set up the stuff simply with just the mass moving, and from there we add the complexity of the motion that we want, because we know that with the camera and the setup everything is going to work.
What was your path in the industry, and where will it take you in the future?
I'm animation supervisor, and quite frankly I think I'm gonna stop here. VFX Soup is really demanding. They have to travel a lot, stay with the client far longer than what we have to do. But the path is just being passionate with what you're doing and do well with that up to the moment when studios will trust you to lead teams, and that's basically how it was for me. I've not been in the business for a long time. This is my 9th year in this business. Before that I was doing something else, but I love animation, and I studied that into 3D animation, and that's just how it happened. If you're passionate about something, people will tend to listen to what you have to say. I don't speak well English, but they are kind enough to take the time to listen to what I'm saying, because they know that what I'm trying to say comes from the passion I have for the motion.
Would you prefer to work in the live action or in the animation world?
Animated feature become hard to me, honestly. Just because I see a lot of recipes in there, except Spider-Man in the Spider-Verse. That was top-notch. That killed me. It was beautiful. And that's the kind of stuff that could get me into feature animation. But beyond that, everything that I see, I can almost anticipate the motion that is going to happen, because we have a lot of curves and we have a lot of recipes, basically. And I lose the surprise there in those actings, The surprise always comes like this. There are a lot of little stuff that you see reproduced from one movie to the next. And so I lost my flame for feature animation a little bit. I love VFX because it's a challenge. When I have VFX, I need to create a CG character sitting next to you that will look as real as you are. And that is in really subtle motions, not in big, broad motion, but how I'm going to be able to do that kind of stuff. I'm not moving much, but I'm alive. And how do you make that on a city character? I love this.
What is your personal definition of animation?
Oh, it's bringing stuff to life. That's what it is. And I'm not saying that feature animation doesn't do it. I'm saying that the way feature animation does it, that's what I was talking about. We are performers, we are actors, right? But we think our subtext. An actor doesn't think his subtext. He lives it. He's performing it. And that's why we have a hard time changing our mindset from one show to the next. It's because we are not giving life to a specific character for a very long period of time. You see the Joker in the Batman movie. What can you do against that? The way he was doing that, you don't create that in animation. It's inspired. It's their job. It's a reason why that's their job, And you inspire yourself, you analyze that, you study that, and that's get us to be better at animating. So yeah, I just want to get better at that.
Yeah, there was Bradford that said that spontaneity is not in animation, so he tried to suggest how to achieve such a natural movements and behavior in animation. It's very difficult, and just with the subtle movements, like also you are saying, we can achieve that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Well, thank you, Sidney.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Avengers! Assemble. Just quickly to finish with this, that thing on the internet, that little channel that is, how do you call that, everything wrong with this movie? I would have hated finding the end sequence in there with something that wouldn't be continuous. So I checked it, nothing is there. This is how we dealt with it. We mapped the portal opening and made sure that every army was in the right spot. And then we re-prevised. The previs is down on the left, and what we did is that our sequence supervisor single-handedly re-prevised this entire thing, putting the names of the army where they were supposed to be. And this process helped us a lot because it allowed us to capture and to catch some of the issues that we had on the plate. So, for instance, on this shot where Rescue is landing, you see that behind her the sorcerers are coming out, but based on the position she's in, there shouldn't be sorcerers there, they are further to the left. Here, there should only be Ravagers. So we discussed that with Marvel, and they were happy to have that kind of stuff fixed. So we fixed that in a few shots and maintain a nice and clean continuity. Oh, and for everybody wondering where Howard the Duck is right in this shot down to the right here, for 40 frames of glory. I will end this talk by showing what we call the tricky one. All the joy and tears and pain that comes with it. This shot was the sum up of all the different challenges that we had to face on this show, and you will easily understand why. So again, the previous team did a very good job at revising this entire shot. But again, having to make it realistic was a whole other challenge for us. So we pushed that aside and started with the basic as we usually do. So just making sure that the camera would feel right and that we would have the action working, going from the CG camera to the plate camera. We then designed some, clash impact. We designed multiple of them, and I'm just showing 2 or 3 of them here. And those are the kind of stuff that we did on our in-house stage. Once we were happy with those, we selected the one that we wanted. And here you can see some of the battles that are, unless you look closely, nobody really sees all those guys doing this. It just feels like noise, but it's actually really choreographed. Back then, when we were doing these shots, we didn't even have a puppet for rescue, so we multiplied our Iron Man and started to design that action with both of them. And yeah, they were supposed to be. Which didn't happen, ultimately. But that got us to this level of animation where we could now add the massive and present this version of the shot to Marvel, and this is what the director approved. It's always a great feeling as an artist to hear a director say, "Oh hell yeah, that feels like war." And we had again a great opportunity to have a chance to be part of Avengers Endgame. Thank you.